Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video today. Today's going to be another Skyblock video. No surprise, I've been playing that nonstop, so figures that I should make some videos on it as well. That's just where my mind is right now, thinking Skyblock all the time. I will be getting some PvP content for you guys that enjoy that way more from me. But today I have an interesting video that a lot of Skyblock players I think will have no knowledge of. I wanted to give my perspective on other games' influence on Skyblock, because the more I play and the more they add, I start to see similarities with another game that I play. I think that a lot of people have played, or at least have played in the past. Runescape. I mentioned in my Dungeons video, but I want to really break down how many things are comparable between these two games, because it's rather interesting. I have to say right off the bat, in no way is this a bad thing. Games take inspiration from each other and ideas and concepts from each other all the time. It's just part of the gaming industry. And Hypixel is pretty much king in my eyes of doing exactly that. They have been so good over the years of taking things that they like and want to implement on their server and completely re-engineering it to fit Hypixel and give it that standard Hypixel feel. And they've been doing this forever, which I've always appreciated, because they don't just copy things, they always alter it to make it feel like a Hypixel game, which is awesome. And that's exactly what they've actually done with Skyblock. Now, I do feel that this intro is necessary to kind of set the backdrop for this entire topic. An MMO has been a video game genre for decades now. If you don't know, it's a massively multiplayer online game, or an MMORPG, which is just a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Skyblock completely falls into the category of MMO, maybe even MMORPG in certain aspects. Now, the game I'm comparing it to is RuneScape, specifically RuneScape 3, because they've actually taken more from RuneScape 3 than they have from old school RuneScape. It's like a staple MMORPG. When you think of MMORPGs or MMOs, you think of two games, or at least I do, and anyone I've ever asked has thought of two games: World of Warcraft and RuneScape. But Skyblock is actually pretty much the same thing, it's just done in the Hypixel classic feel. Now, the thing about MMOs, typically there are a lot of similarities between them. So some skills will be the same, some similarities between weapons and mechanics will be the same, and there is some leeway there. So no way am I saying Hypixel's directly copied that, because again, they've always made it their own. And frankly, maybe there wasn't any inspiration, and it's just because they're two MMOs that they became so similar. That's very possible in a lot of circumstances. But there are a couple things that are so clearly taken that it's kind of irrefutable. And again, it's not a bad thing. I just really find it funny because I actively play RuneScape, and the second they added certain features into this game that I actively play every day, I was like, wait a second, this is weird. I'm gonna try to make this as comprehensive as I can, so we're going to start with the skills. In Skyblock, we have farming, mining, combat, foraging, fishing, enchanting, alchemy, carpentry, runecrafting, and taming. These two are kind of not real skills, but the rest are complete skills that have major benefits when you level them. Now, I think farming is one of these skills that is just going to be overlapped between many different games. Minecraft has so many different things that you can plant, and it's always been a part of Minecraft, so I think that's just overlap. As you can take a look here, RuneScape has the exact same skill, literally called farming, and you do the exact same thing. You plant various things and wait a certain amount of time, and then you pick those things and replant those things. So I think that's just complete overlap, and there's no influence between the two games there, but it is a similarity. I'm going to be pointing out similarities, as well as the things that are completely taken by Skyblock. Same thing applies to mining, clearly. It's called Minecraft. There's always been mining, so again, don't think there's much influence there. But again, they share the same skill. I will say in Minecraft, and especially Skyblock, I believe mining is actually more engaging. As in RuneScape, it is very AFK, if you want it to be. Now, combat's an interesting one because they group combat into one category between all the styles, i.e. there's no archery skill, which there is in RuneScape. So anything that involves combat is just grouped into this skill, whereas in RuneScape, you have 8 different skills that contribute to your combat level, overall combat level. Each skill individually also has levels. Foraging, again, obvious skill to have in the game, huge part of Minecraft. And its counterpart is woodcutting. I do find it really funny that there's a complete difference in activity, because in Skyblock it's actually incredibly active if you want to be efficient, whereas RuneScape, again, because it's a gathering skill, typically gathering skills in this game are very AFK. Now, fishing is a prime example of where there is overlap, but Hypixel did it so much better. I know a lot of people have trouble sitting down and fishing in Skyblock for whatever reason. I don't know if they just find it boring flat out, or if it's just too tedious. I'm not really sure the reason, but I enjoy it so much more than its counterpart in RuneScape. You can see that I'm almost in the top 100,000 at only fishing 18, so clearly a lot of people just do not like it, which is funny because it's so much more engaging. It keeps you excited on the next level as you unlock more and more different creatures that you can pull up for good rewards. There's just a lot of stuff that you acquire through fishing that keeps it incredibly entertaining for me. Now, enchanting, there's almost no similarities. There's not a comparable skill. If I had to pick something from RuneScape, I think it would probably be invention, because essentially the biggest component of invention is the fact that you create weapon attachments, essentially, or armor attachments, or just tool attachments that enhance the object that you put it on. There's a billion different things that you can put on armor, weapons, and tools that do a billion different things in that game. So it's all about finding the combination that is good in that particular circumstance. So it's kind of similar in a way, but I think there's too much difference between these two to really be compared. Alchemy is flat out herb lore. They are the exact same skill in nature. You create potions that do different things. The higher your level or the higher tier material you use to make the potion, the more XP you get from it, the better it typically is. So those two are pretty much carbon copies of each other. But again, potions have always been prevalent within Minecraft, so it's hard to know how much influence there was there. Now here's one that I think that there was probably a decent amount of influence, because this is another carbon copy of construction from RuneScape. The entire goal of construction is to be able to make different objects within your home that either are decorative or actually do give utility. Both of those things are present in the carpentry skill here. A lot of stuff is just decorative, but there are some things that do have the utility built into being a more decorative object. Plus, carpentry was added well after the initial skills, so I think that's kind of what you have to look at in terms of if there was influence from other games. Runecrafting, well, you've guessed it, is runecrafting from RuneScape. Although they share the same name, there isn't actually much similarity between the skills. Runecrafting is completely cosmetic as of right now in Skyblock, whereas runecrafting in RuneScape 3 is used to create magic runes for combat, skilling, and teleportation, as well as a myriad of other things. Now, taming is a very interesting skill. It's a very new skill, and I think this is a perfect example of Hypixel putting a twist on something and making it their own. Now, there are pets for every single skill as well as every single boss within RuneScape, but the difference here is that they do not give benefits in-game. The only pets in RuneScape that give benefits is a legendary pet, which has certain abilities that you might find in the taming skill or the pets of Skyblock. Now, taming also very closely follows summoning. Summoning is used to summon familiars with given abilities and powers, very, very similar to what pets do in this game. Now, the abilities are going to be different because in RuneScape there's no XP boosting abilities where you get more XP for having a pet out. Pets usually have abilities that give bonuses towards the skill, so it could be faster, or they're a combat familiar that helps you out when you're fighting certain bosses or enemies. RuneScape reserved all of its XP boosting stuff for outfits that you get in the game. So that was an interesting one for me because it kind of shares a couple attributes, but I would say most closely resembles summoning. Now the moment is here to really get into things that I think they directly took from RuneScape 3, and these are almost irrefutable in my eyes. Again, no problem with it, but it's just really funny if you play both games, which very few of you probably do. It's funny to look at. So starting off, they just put this into the game where you can buy teleports to various areas. Previously, you could only go to the hub or the private island depending on where you were at the time. If you're in the hub, you go to the private island and vice versa. Alternatively, you could use any of your portals that are laid down. But they just added this so that you can actually pick specific locations around the map. If you wanted to go to the park in the past, you would either have to go to the hub and then run over to the warp pad to the park, or you could use something like the Jungle Island portal or any of the portals to go specifically to the park area. Now, these scrolls are essentially a carbon copy of lodestones. Lodestones take you all around the map of RuneScape to different main hubs and cities that may be of importance. Additionally, there are teleports through the magic skill that take you into even more specific areas if you have the right runes to cast it, or the level to cast it, or the requirement. But this edition was really one of the things that pushed me to want to make this video, because this is exactly the same thing. Now, getting into even more detail here, if we go to the Skyblock hub here and we head over to the Slayer Master, this is where things get really obvious. Maddox the Slayer Master, that's who he is, right? You go here to get yeah, let's just pretend I didn't do that. So as you can see, my Slayer is terrible because I've barely done any of it. Give me some time, man. My island's not that old, but I really should be getting on Slayer any day now because this is pathetic. But anyways, you go here to get one of 3 tasks currently, and what that essentially does is it gives you a XP amount that you have to get to, and then you will fight a boss. Essentially, if you defeat the boss, you complete the Slayer assignment and you get to choose another one. Now, currently there are only 3 available, and you can see there's a bunch in development, but this is a Slayer skill from RuneScape. It is the exact same thing. I'll show you right here, but you go to a Slayer Master around Galanor, the RuneScape world, depending on your combat level and your Slayer level, and you will get assigned randomly a Slayer monster that you have to kill. You get a set number of them instead of a XP amount of them. And additionally, there's obviously a billion Slayer monsters in the game, because this is one of the skills in RuneScape 3 that actually goes to 120 instead of the traditional 99. They continually add them too, so there's always more and more, which is something I'm really hoping that Hypixel does here, because Slayer for a lot of people I think is monotonous and they don't like grinding it because it's so repetitive, it's painful. Like, you can feel your soul slowly getting crushed. So I really hope that they create a whole bunch of different Slayer assignments that you can do to really spice it up a bit and give you some variety as you're grinding, because at least when you're fighting different things, it's not nearly as bad as fighting the same thing 400,000 times. Now, additionally, in the rewards here, I don't have it because, again, I'm a noob, but if you go to the rewards here, there's a thing called the Maddox Bat Phone. Use this to get another Slayer assignment directly from Maddox, and you don't have to return to him to get one. This is a thing called NPC Contact in RuneScape, and you essentially can talk to a variety of characters throughout the world without being next to them talking to them. But you can use this as well for Slayer. You can call up any Slayer Master and ask for another task on the go, and they'll give it to you. Now, another thing that I think was greatly influenced by RuneScape is the auction house / bazaar. Now, originally the auction house was kind of close and I always saw the similarities between it, but it wasn't until they added the bazaar that I really realized that there were some similarities. The bazaar is pretty much a carbon copy of the RuneScape Grand Exchange, or GE. It functions as the exact same way, where you can go on here and you can pick any single item that you want. Obviously there's a billion more items in RuneScape, so you have to have a search feature where you go through and just search for whatever you want. But you can go in here and buy any sort of item for any price, or even sell it. You can create buy orders. If I wanted to buy a pork chop, you can see the buy price and sell price. It doesn't give you a sell price on RuneScape, but it does give you a median buy price that updates depending on if it goes up or down. It doesn't mean it's going to buy for that amount or sell for that amount, but that's just what the item's listed at that time. If I wanted to buy a raw pork chop on here, it is the exact same thing as I would do on RuneScape. I would just create a buy order. I'd select how much I want to buy if I were to want to buy 1 here, and just like that, you place a order for a raw pork chop, or whatever you want. We are now the proud owner of 1 raw pork chop. Now, another similarity can be drawn here with Magic Find. In Skyblock, Magic Find is essentially the chance of you finding a quote-unquote rare item from a monster you're fighting, or even a material that they drop, such as the enchanted ender pearl from Enderman. That would fall under Magic Find. What is Magic Find in RuneScape? You probably didn't ask, but I will tell you. It is basically the idea of the RDT, or rare drop table. These are all drops that are rare, shocking, I know, that you have a chance of rolling onto depending on what you're fighting and the tier of luck that you're currently wearing. There are different rings in RuneScape that enhance the tier of luck, which give you access to bigger and better things more frequently. I know I waited till the very end to bring up dungeons, but this is the biggest one out of them all. Through the alpha testing, I very quickly realized that dungeons is an incredibly similar activity as the dungeoneering skill of RuneScape 3. So similar, in fact, that they actually took specific rooms directly out of dungeoneering that I recognized while playing. Dungeons and dungeoneering from Skyblock is so similar to dungeoneering from RuneScape 3 that it's hard for me to break down all the similarities. Both share an eerily similar map design, where you go room by room and clear it of enemies. Some rooms have an enemy that is a lot more powerful, such as a little mini boss, and some rooms require a key to enter. Now, while in dungeons there are only several rooms that require keys to enter, the black and the red key in Skyblock, a high majority of rooms in Dungeoneering and RuneScape require keys to get into. That's kind of the entire way that you go through a dungeon, is you go room by room until you find a specific key that unlocks a specific room, and then within that room you usually find a key for another room. So there's a lot of back and forth that you can do. When you open up the map in Skyblock, you'll immediately realize how similar it is to the map and the layout in RuneScape. In the RuneScape shop, you can buy weapons and armor and utility items directly from it for the tokens you get by completing dungeons. And in Dungeons in Skyblock, you can convert specific armor and weapons to a Dungeoneering version with essence, essentially, which would be tokens, which will make them better within dungeons or more effective within dungeons. Now, I don't have footage of the puzzle room within Skyblock dungeons that was completely copied from RuneScape, but I'll show you the one in RuneScape, and if you've encountered the Skyblock version, you will know exactly the room I'm referring to because it is a carbon copy. Okay, this was a bit of a fail, but I could not locate either of these rooms within their respective games. I searched for 4 hours because in both circumstances, dungeons are randomly generated, so chances are that you might not even see the room you're looking for, which is exactly what happened to me. Bro, I can't find the puzzle that I'm looking for, but I can find 2 identical randomly generated puzzles next door to each other. Really? But I snagged this off the wiki, and the room that I'm referring to is the room within dungeons that has a whole bunch of teleporters in it. You jump into a teleporter and you teleport to a separate room with another 4 teleporters, and you basically have to find your way to the center to solve the puzzle. If you look closely at this screenshot, you don't even need to see the room in action to tell that this is the exact same room. You enter in one of the red portals in the very starting room there, and you're teleported to one of the squares with another 4 portals in each of the cubes. From there, you do the exact same thing as dungeons until you find your way onto one of the middle pressure pads in the center room, and then you solve the puzzle. If you thought I was full of it up until this point, now you can see without a doubt that there was heavy influence. Regardless, back to the rest of the video. Additionally, the Watcher boss is actually very similarly modeled to certain enemies within Dungeoneering and RuneScape as a whole. The Seeker. They don't have the same mechanics or anything, but they are very similar in nature. I'll show you the boss fight of a Watcher-like enemy that you encounter. As you can see, that's pretty close to the Watcher. Well, to top this all off, here's another Watcher-like enemy right here. The similarities are striking. Sorry about the fan. In Dungeoneering, you can save certain items you obtain through the dungeon, as you can't bring in any of your own items into it, so you have to craft your own or find your own through boss fights. So it can be a tedious process of building up your gear within Dungeoneering, but you can save this gear that you create or find to a loadout that essentially will be a lot better within dungeons and that you can use every time you play. It's clearly the thing they're going for in Skyblock, where you can convert a set of armor or weapon into a Dungeoneering specific armor that is better within a dungeon. Whew, this has taken me a lot of time, so hopefully you've enjoyed this interesting take on Skyblock and its roots, I guess, or some of its influences. 2 things I want to throw in at the end, because they're not completely identical or really all that similar, as I think they are more of just an MMO specific attribute. Obviously, there are bosses within Skyblock that you can fight, such as the Ender Dragons, Magma Boss, Endstone Protector, things of that nature that drop very unique, specific, usually expensive items that are quite rare. Pretty much all MMOs have bossing, so it's not too crazy that Skyblock also has bossing, but again, in RuneScape, there's a billion different bosses you fight, and again, the loot is very unique, usually very valuable, and rare. Additionally, all MMOs pretty much have a crafting mechanic. Here in Skyblock, it's seen through the collections of any of the various skills you can see. In RuneScape, it's kind of broken down again into several skills between smithing, crafting, fletching. Those are the ones that make most of the core stuff, such as arrows, armor, weapons, and much, much more. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate you dropping a like and a subscription to the channel. It really helps me out. I'm trying to branch out into Skyblock content. It's not easy, so it really means a lot if you dropped a like and shared this video around even. Maybe? I don't know. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was a blast making this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.